Welcome to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but for cis straight women in their 30s. Gone is the question of whether you are a cool dude like Michelangelo or a fiery, passionate person like Raphael. Instead, it's whether you're a Carrie, a Charlotte, a Samantha, or a Miranda. For your information, I'm a queer. And this was a big demographic deal. It did have a rather large cultural impact inspired by the fact that it targeted and defined a group that was somewhat new for the comedy-drama formula to hone in on. Inspired, of course, by the fact that rom-coms do so damn well with that particular group of people. And within that notoriety and that status exists the question of how well did they handle trans people? Did they even do trans people at all? And didn't this show have a horrible biphobic episode too that's probably worth considering? And the answers are not great, yes they did, and oh hell yeah they had a really terrible episode with bi people that I will be talking about. But before we can jump into discussing the video, it's that time of the month again when old Lily over here prayed correctly to the internet gods and got a sponsorship. More specifically, Atlas VPN, one of the top VPNs on the market. Now, I'm sure we all know what VPNs allow you to do. Change your location so that you can get around the ridiculous stuff like Netflix restrictions, protect yourselves from malware, trackers, and those targeted ads that happen after you typed Lady Dimitrescu feet into Google search one time. Come on. Not that big of a deal. I just said one time. I was just having a look. It was just interest, okay? I didn't want to get ads about it. But this is an extra special deal, a Black Friday special deal, that time of year when Americans brutally attack each other over TVs and the rest of the world watches horrified, where Atlas VPN is available for only $1.70 a month plus 6 months extra, available at the link in my description or through the QR code on the screen right now. That's a really damn good price for a product that is efficient and works, which does mean a lot coming out of my mouth. I wouldn't say if it wasn't true. So yeah, $1.70 a month with 6 months extra plus a 30-day money-back guarantee? That's worth it. Go look at the link. Click on the link. Spend money on the product from that link if that's something that you think you need to get. Anyway, with all of that said and done, let's jump into the episode that stands at the forefront though. Season 3's episode 18, Cock-A-Doodle-Do, which heavily features Samantha arguing with a bunch of black trans sex workers. Oh god. Oh no. Oh god no. That name alone would seem to be worrying, and especially so because it's kind of comparing the cockerels in the episode to the black trans sex workers in like a sort of analogy kind of sense, but the target of the episode being black trans sex workers just off the bat? That's not a group that often gets respect from media. Makes me a little worried. So, obviously, this is an ensemble cast, each of which involves the characters dealing with their own minor plot lines that intersect and occasionally overlap, but due to the focus that we have here, the only thing we're gonna care about is the trans sex worker thing. So who gives a shit about what Miranda or Charlotte are up to if they're not saying something mean about trans people? With that noted, our episode here truly kicks off at the very beginning, when Carrie is comparing her own situation with cocks outside of her window making loud noises at night, with the situation occurring outside of Samantha's window, where black trans sex workers are making loud noises at night.
You never know what's just around the corner. Or in Samantha's case, just outside your window.
Do you see the humorous transphobic parallel here between the male chickens and the trans women that the show is drawing a line between with the thickest metaphorical Sharpie known to humankind? If you don't get that analogy, then, I just told you about it, so, welcome to the party now. You should get it now. And the show, thankfully, doesn't use an offensive term here, instead referring to them as this.
There they were, Samantha's friendly neighborhood pre-op transsexual hookers.
Which is better than the word tranny, there's no doubt about that, but also, how do they know that these people are pre-op? Seriously, it's not like they're wearing a sign that says, I haven't had surgery yet, and you should make a judgment on me for that, because I honestly really hate the idea inherently of pre/post-op trans person. It's this thing that people do which implies that the operation is an essential part of the transition journey for any trans person, and that others should mark them or indicate them based on that progress. Which I think is frankly rude as shit, and maybe you should just stay to your own fucking business and call them a transgender person and leave it at that. But an additional bonus here in this labelling by the show is that it makes it pretty definitive. I normally get told off by some audience members for treating people like this as being under the trans umbrella, when the show sometimes refers to them as transvestites or drag queens or gay men in dress. Because the issue was that many shows had no real involvement or engagement with the queer community, and they ended up writing all queer people to be some sort of monolithic blob that was pretty much just the same in their mind. It's why you see people to this day still confuse sexual identity and gender identity all the time, and why drag queens, trans women, intersex people, and gay men just sort of get lumped together in shows that I've reviewed like this. They all get the same jokes thrown at them and the same mockery. Regardless, the show immediately nukes any kindness in that statement by clarifying that these trans women are half men, half women, and totally annoying.
Half man, half woman, totally annoying.
Girl, she got herself a handful of them.
Okay, here is something to remember. This episode was written by 3 people. 2 gay guys, Darren Star and Michael Patrick King, and a woman, Candice Bushnell. So we can't really play the same card here of this being just how straight cis men view the community from the outside, but it brings to mind a more important note, which is that not all gay people, especially back in the early 2000s of media, were writing the kindest or the most correct interpretations of the trans community. A gay man can be just as transphobic as a straight man, especially when that gay man might be writing a show that is designed to appeal to mid-30s cis-straight white women.
You better get that thing out of my ass or I'm gonna shit on it.
Get that thing out of my ass or I'm gonna shit on it.
The of that time period does ultimately apply to a lot of creators, and while having people closer to the community be engaged in creation is a good start, and I think it does impact this episode in the long term, it doesn't necessarily guarantee success on a representation front. Also, I recognise that bloody name. Darren Star. Where do I know Darren Star from? Emily in Paris, that show that's basically like a modern version of Sex and the City, but if it was paid for by the Parisian Tourist Board to advertise Paris to American tourists, while also making French people look like the most stereotypical, cliche-ridden nightmares ever put to screen. And I'm an English person. I've seen plenty of nasty French character portrayals over the years. It's all starting to make some sense now that Sex and the City and Emily in Paris have things in common. That is an unfortunate similarity.
Maybe I'll educate the chef a little bit about customer service. You think you're gonna change the entire French culture by sending back a steak?
How could a 17-year-old be out of college?
I need to know, is my son a good lover?
Back on episode track, because we got a little distracted making a very important point about the people behind the show, all the girls are having a good old laugh at the black trans sex workers for their experiences that they vocally discussed on the street so that Samantha could hear them. And Samantha is annoyed that she is paying so much money for an apartment and has to deal with these sorts of unsavoury characters. specifically saying this line.
It's trendy by day and tranny by night.
Trendy by day and tranny by night is definitely about what I would expect from this show, so it's nice to see that Sex and the City is not trying to surprise me at all and staying right on course for a show of its time period. And of course, we then see the show veer into a discussion by Carrie about what she's considered an expert in, the sex column thing that she writes, as she explains why people sleep with trans sex workers.
It's the other white meat.
Ah, I understand that pseudo-straight married men from New Jersey have to get laid, but do they have to do it on my blog?
We're apparently the other white meat, a reference to an old ad campaign for pork that portrayed it as a healthy meat in the same veins as chicken.
Popular again.
Yeah, with mashed potatoes.
That is good, I'll guarantee.
It's sort of a dig at the idea that women are white meat here, and that trans women are pork. A meat that is definitely not poultry like turkey or chicken, but it is pretending to be a white meat, and that's what gets some guys going. This is gonna be a long video, huh? This tranny talk, as they call it, is interrupted by Charlotte being all sad and mopey, not because of the offensive breakfast discussion that is going on and would presumably make a trans person at a neighbouring table feel a tad uncomfortable.
Tranny? Transsexuals. Chicks with dicks, boobs on top, balls down below.
But at the fact that blah had happened with a blah blah and blah blah blah. Sorry, that was my innate censorship of plot lines that I don't fucking care about. So, the trans people get a new nickname from the group that will stick with them for the rest of this episode. The Up My Ass Players, in reference to a story that they were talking about on the street in regards to a sex act they did, and... well, the best I can say about this is that it's an improvement from calling them trannies, though I suspect that we're probably not done with that word yet either. A real lose-lose for the community on that front.
I mean, it's like they're putting on a show. The Up My Ass Players.
And yeah, all the jokes around the trans sex workers are just ass-based humour, because I mean, why stop when you're on a roll, I suppose, and the classic thing of only having one joke applies to almost everything around trans people, I guess. Samantha then decides to go out onto the street and use her PR professional skills to negotiate with these trans people. And during the time talking to their faces, she refers to them as ladies and as a woman, so it's nice to know the offensive stuff is kept behind closed doors and at brunches with your friends.
Too early for tranny talk?
Which is actually more of a terrifying indictment of the way in which progressive people, or people who want to be progressive, will say the nice things when they're in front of the minority, but then absolutely present the classical bigotries when they're not around. And weirdly enough, Samantha's sort of strange, condescending, affecting manner seems to work to solve this issue, as the trans sex workers agree to take their business down the street to not keep her awake, which Carrie puts down to the fact that Samantha always knows how to get men to do what she wants, even if those men are half women.
Don't I know it?
Samantha always knew how to get her way with men, even if they were half women.
Damn, this is weird, having a transphobic voiceover narrative for the episode. A real first for this YouTube channel, honestly. We haven't really had many transphobic narrators. It's almost like having the voice of God hovering over you and occasionally throwing out really bigoted sentences or slur words. Just odd and unnecessary. Because I don't know, maybe these trans people moved down the street because it was the polite thing to do and somebody finally just asked them? Maybe it had nothing to do with some weird gender play stuff around Samantha and her persuasion talents, and just more of a reflection upon the qualities of those people.
Sorry to wake you, baby. We'll take it down here a bit.
I appreciate it.
But it seems like the issue at this point should be resolved. Like this is the end of the Samantha storyline for the week. Problem? Trans sex workers being loud. Solution? Ask them to move, and they do that. Yet there are still 22 minutes left, and surely Mr. Big can't take up that entire time slot.
So tell me, is red a mistake?
In what way?
I'm repainting my bedroom.
I mean, look, I know I promised we wouldn't talk about the other storylines, because straight cis people stuff. You can find that anywhere on any channel at any frickin' time. You can't find trans stuff, though. But this fight between Carrie and Miranda in the middle of a thrift shop was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Not because of the comedy writing or because of the acting in it, but because I couldn't stop looking at this random extra in the background who looked so worried the whole time.
He is bad for you.
I'm not going back for more, and
If you start up with Big again...
I am not starting up with Big again. Perfect, walk away.
Whoever you are, you did an amazing job selling me on, like, the idea of being a person in the background of a huge, like, friend fight in public. Like, fantastic work, extra. But don't worry, our trans people come back by literally coming back to the street again, making a bunch of noise in the background as Samantha tries to sleep with the laziest, sweatiest man I have ever seen. Dude, do something that isn't missionary. It will blow your mind how much you can vary sex up. And during this act of coitus, when the man is getting upset that Samantha is distracted more by the trans people than him, like, I don't know, maybe just do some better work in sex, dude, Samantha reveals that she called the cops on them. She called the cops on black trans sex workers. You know how that story often ends up in real life? 'Cause let me tell you, it certainly isn't happy or funny or something that is good. Samantha really does represent that Karen sort of attitude here, using the cops as a bludgeon to excise a group that annoys her, to enact who knows what kind of horrifying punishment while she just sort of ignores it. She then decides to open the window and engage in a screaming insult match with trans people, which of course doesn't end well or in her favour.
Fuck my car!
Yeah, keep talking. I'll come down there and cut it off for you.
I'd like to see you try, motherfucker!
As she begins filling a pot with water while shouting about those darn trannies before rushing out of the window and splashing it all over one of them, cackling maniacally as the cops turn up.
We are moving.
You heard the man. Move it along.
Her date for the night leaves, claiming that Samantha freaks him out, and honestly, good for that guy. She doesn't exactly give off the best impression here with her sudden aggressive and obsessive attitude towards these trans sex workers, as well as just immediately throwing slurs out when they annoy her enough.
$7,000 a month, and I have to charge you fucking trannies out there. I don't fucking think so.
Funnily enough, though, this episode still isn't over yet, because picking a fight with a community of people who have been through so much shit that they will not and do not let it keep them down doesn't go super well, as Samantha gets awoken by that same trans person throwing eggs at her window, as Carrie makes another joke about this person while misgendering them.
He may have gone away a pre-op transsexual, but he came back loaded with eggs.
Good lord, the show does not stop with the tired old hits that it has built its repertoire out of. I'm sure the gay men involved were very happy with the basic ass bitch stereotypes they employed to get a laugh out of the dominant Karen group that they appealed to. Also, Carrie will just not stop saying this half man, half woman line, which is painful and painful and painful to hear every time. However, Samantha decides that vinegar is not working so well here for resolving her issue, so she hosts a big rooftop party for the trans sex workers and all their friends, doing a cookout to apologise, and hopefully reform some bonds in a way that will allow all to live peacefully once more. And in that regards, it's kind of a positive ending. There's a little bit of a weird interaction between Carrie and the black trans sex workers, as she slips into AAVE and mimicry in response to them, though they encourage it, I guess, which might have something to do with the whole way that minorities will allow mainstream identities to engage in that behaviour as a means of assimilating and getting to participate in society at all.
What do you mean, you with the flower? You talking to me? I need to see you spin first, sister.
A conversation that I reckon is probably a tad out of the social discussion range that Sex and the City was aiming for. I'm sure the way that the white gay guys and white cis woman that wrote this was doing it as some sort of upbeat reinforcement of the idea that we should all just get along, completely ignoring the slur words and bigotries and statements that get thrown out around the trans community during this episode that are in no way, shape or form addressed at all. The trans people mostly exist as an antagonistic force or as a prop for the straight cis mid-30s women to bounce comedy off of, rather than having any characterization or narrative to themselves. We learn very little about them that isn't filtered through the narration by Carrie, and they literally do just exist in the background of most shots.
Don't worry. They have a very lovely life.
It's not great, or even good, or even neutral representation. It's definitely bad, but like passably ignorable, which makes it just part of the mainstream noise that made up a large part of what trans people got to see growing up, and that affected how other people would talk about us to our faces or behind our backs. It's just a big old pile of misinformation and shitty attitudes masked as a romantic comedy to let people who want to pretend they are sort of progressive watch it without feeling uncomfortable. And I actually have another example from this series that reinforces this idea of the fact that it was a poorly written show for the queer community outside of gay people, even with writers and creators who were gay. And that is the infamous bisexual episode, Boy Girl, in which Carrie hooks up with a bisexual and then spends the next 35 minutes spouting a bunch of horrifying stereotypes, lies, and nightmarishly common bigotries about something that you would hope a sexual columnist would be a bit more understanding of or attempting to learn about. The very super infamous scene here is the breakfast scene. The scene they do pretty commonly, having all the gals together at a brunch table going over whatever the topics of the video will be on. It's part of the formula and also a very recognizable cultural element for the cis-straight mid-30s women in the audience. I kind of want to shorten that to something easier because of how often I keep referencing it, but all I have so far is Karens, which is somewhat accurate, but has been stretched to apply to a much larger swathe of people, so I don't know if it really works anymore. Anyway, the scene begins with all the girls having a little giggle at another one of the gays again, because that is what they do, and what I presume many cis-straight groups of the time did whenever they met one of us. Just go off and have a good old laugh at our existence with your friends.
He's a bisexual.
Well, I could have told you that, sweetie.
I don't think you're allowed to be bisexual in Colorado.
And Carrie is also shocked that this guy would be so openly bisexual and casual about it. Like it should be something he keeps secret or hidden, which seems very antithetical to what her column is about. And all of the women here seem to be on the same train, that him being bisexual is an obvious problem. I'm not paraphrasing here. That is the literal text of the script.
Is that a problem? I mean, what kind of question is that? Is that a problem?
Of course it's a problem.
What the fuck? And it just gets more terrible from there, with them pulling out all the classics. Kids are just going bisexual because it's the cool thing to do. Bisexual men are really just gay men who can't commit. This new generation has mixed all the sexes up so I can't understand it anymore, and that panics me because this tiny life raft of my sexuality is all I've got, so I will use this confusion to lash out aggressively. Much like with the transphobia, this truly is a perfect condensation of the biphobia that exists within these kind of circles. to such a degree that I would suspect it was satirical if I wasn't also aware of exactly what it was meant to be as a mainstream romantic comedy that appealed to that specific group.
All the kids are going bi.
So what, if all the bi kids are jumping off a bridge, you gonna do that too? Date the bisexual guy thing in college, but in the end, they all ended up with men.
Explains why there are no available men left for us.
Oh, and of course Carrie also says that she doesn't even think bisexuality exists. It's just a step on the road to being gay. Because, you know, see the previous sentence about this being the perfect storm of biphobia. They dropped the double dipping in Greedy Line 2 from Miranda, the pick a lane / side and stick with it from Charlotte. The only one who seems to be pro this is Samantha, whose whole point in this group is being the sexually adventurous one. So that sort of makes sense.
I'm a trisexual. I'll try anything once.
The episode ends with Carrie making out with Alanis Morissette, and deciding that while it was nice, she is just too much of an old fart who isn't down with the kids for this, and leaves, never to see the bisexual dude she was dating ever again.
That was the last night I saw Sean. I realized they could do whatever they wanted, but deep down, I was too old to play this game.
I'm sorry. You kissed Alanis Morissette at the height of her everything? And that was your takeaway? Honestly, that might be the most biphobic thing that's happened ever. Especially in this episode. Regardless, you see the point I'm making here. Queer people are an experiment, or an experience, or an event, or an encounter, or an exposure that goes on around the group that truly matters, and who will mock and make light of them with no real attempt to engage with them. In doing so, it allows all the queer bigotries to fester unchallenged, to exist as just facts or what these people feel with no pushback from others or from within the group itself. It's bad writing for representation because it doesn't exist as representation. It exists as set dressing or narrative devices to be used, abused, and thrown away on the journey of those who really matter to us, the cis-straight mid-30s white women. It leaves a frankly sour taste in my mouth for two reasons. I'm trans and bi, so certainly a rough one for me. But it was nice to branch the episode out a little bit to cover a group of people who so often get screwed over as much as trans people, in the monolithic stereotype misinformation that gets spread about us. Hooray! Both bisexual and trans people get to experience very similar getting fucked over by media. Woo! We're all getting screwed. So, that's the episode, and half of another episode, as well as the analysis of what went wrong. And I think you can see that Sex and the City just sort of comfortably sits into the same category as shows like How I Met Your Mother or House or The Simpsons. Shows that were just a reflection of mainstream attitudes and feelings with no attempt to analyse those ideas, or to give the group on the receiving end of them a chance to defend themselves, or to give their side of the story. They didn't get a chance to be humanised, and it's such a depressingly common theme that exists even within places that have queer people involved, which makes it clear how that media hegemony really squashes everything to fit a particular mould. A mould that is openly hostile to certain outside groups that might want to feel comfortable or okay watching these shows without worrying what impression it gives or what terrible things it handwaves away. And that's my take on it. A take that I hope you like or enjoy, or just maybe this was informative in some manner. Or heck, maybe you just like listening to my voice. It's all kind of valid and legitimate. I don't really care, honestly, as long as you got to the end of the video. It doesn't bother me. If any of that is true, then give me a like, share, subscribe. Ping noir, milafwa, kafulu rele wagnala, fatan, and comment. It's all very helpful, and it really does show to YouTube and the algorithm that I might just matter, and these videos maybe just deserve to keep getting recommended. I don't know. If you really like what I've done, then the best way to show that is by going to my Patreon, Ko-Fi, or here on YouTube, and subscribing as a member. That income is essential to giving me a consistent source for funding these videos and my time spent on them, without relying upon the notoriously shaky ground that is ad revenue. Especially an ad revenue that so often ends up just being anti-trans stuff. Trust me, I'm aware of it, but honestly, if it's not influencing you, then just think of it as me nicking their cash while literally presenting the ideas that are antithetical to the messages that those ads try to present. With all of that said, thank nga nun video in megab frodog ya narha. Sorry, I'm trying to do a summoning ritual to bind Sarah Jessica Parker once more to the dark, and some of it seems to be slipping through into the video. Magung sex ugla, Magung Carrie Bradshaw, il mechob thachan. I'm sure there's like one person who like speaks the Cthulhu language really well and is going to get so mad at my pronunciation, but honestly, it's funny. Come on, it's funny. Also, yeah, this is a sock. I don't have like a proper pop filter, so think of it as the fun, low-budget essence of these videos that keeps you coming back for more, hopefully. Anyway, with all that said, thank you for watching the video, and also thank you to the $5 up Patreons who should have been scrolling past the screen this whole time while I was talking about it. I really appreciate them, they really help me to make this stuff, and I hope that all of you have a great day.